Welcome to the At the Coalface podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. This podcast is all about what it's really like in the trenches of digital and e-commerce. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the pod. And I have the pleasure of welcoming Manjita, but she goes by Kauss, to the pod today. Welcome, Kauss, to the pod.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely my pleasure. Now, Kauss, you are a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and you have worked in digital product, for a number of years since your early days at NCR in 2013. So, you've kind of been working in the digital product space for over 8 years now. You've had your own businesses. You've pivoted those businesses. You worked as a product owner at NCR. Then you worked at Paytm, Mintra, and then you worked in product also with IBM. So you're a team lead at IBM. You also worked in e-commerce over at Sterling Commerce with AT&T. Look, I guess it feels very much like you've got this entrepreneurial e-commerce digital tech background. Would that be pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think that would be very accurate. And I'll kind of add on a couple of more words to that. And I would throw in experience and I would throw in growth. And one of the primary reasons why I kind of started making, in my early days of my career, it was more about the supply chain commerce, right? When you say Sterling Commerce or IBM or NCR, it was all about the kind of products that I built out was about the supply chains, your inventories, your pricing, and all of that stuff. And then started moving more towards the experience side of commerce, which actually ends up impacting growth like nobody's business, right? So I would layer on experience and growth as two other words over there.
Fantastic. Now, I have been following you. We've been connected on LinkedIn, I think, for a few years now, and I've been watching your journey with interest. You're a powerful woman in the industry. You put out great content. And in fact, if I remember rightly, before Kubrick became Mason, and we'll talk about Mason a little bit more as we go on, but it started out as a platform called Kubrick. And in fact, Kubrick was focused really on that logistical side of commerce, empowering intelligent logistics behind commerce. And it was you founded that in San Fran, originally coming from Bangalore in India, and then moving to the United States, and then obviously building Kubrick out in San Francisco before it pivoted, and you turned that and rebranded it as Mason, and spending a lot of time in Toronto in Canada. So Kubrick was really focused on that logistical side of commerce, wasn't it, originally?
Yeah, it was the logistical side, but for the content and experience. So even when you say experience, right, what you're talking about is your web store, your mobile store, even direct to commerce, and all your off-store social experiences also end up being parts of your store. And all of that needs to be powered with some kind of logistics, right? We tend to not think about that as logistics. So yes, with Kubrick, we were powering the experience logistics, which was how do we enable, scale and accelerate content and creative production for larger firms.
Now with the pivot and the rebrand to Mason, you really are building out what feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like a modular, componentized, no-code platform to enable both, headless e-commerce, to enable the building out of marketplace connectors and product feeds, as well as some of the content-driven experiences in commerce as well. So it's kind of a modular, componentized, Lego block type, no-code, rapid deployment, rapid code management platform that is proprietary, and you guys have built it out. And what feels like almost like a SaaS nature, so you consume it as a SaaS platform. Is that reasonably accurate?
I think you're really one of the few people who could really explain what we do so succinctly. Thank you, Jason. And yeah, you got it right. And before I even dive into what is Mason, I think I'm just going to step back a little bit and give a little picture of how it is as a consumer. And I'm also a big consumer of e-commerce products. And if you notice the pattern, an interesting pattern in how we consumers and shoppers are interacting with brands and with makers online, and it's so distributed. We might be on YouTube one moment watching a video, browsing stuff, and all of a sudden we discover something that we want to use. We might be on Instagram, or we might be directly connected to that brand and be browsing on their store. So as a maker, as a brand maker, you now have a distributed store, right? You have to be everywhere because you don't know where your shoppers are coming in from and what state of mind and intent they are at. So to power this completely distributed store, you need a system that is headless, that connects your store to the experience. And if you step back, and you know that, Jason, you've been in the industry a while too, and you've helped so many brands grow. Coming online is so easy with like Shopify or WooCommerce or all of that coming up. You can build your store online. You can start your business online. And then you have all your distributed channels where you can find your consumers, right? But bang in the middle, there's this entire heavy operational unit, even if it's just you and a couple of other folks. It's heavy operations that you have to set up to make sure that what's happening in your business, your inventory running out or coming back in stock, prices changing, discounts that you're giving, even consumers interacting with your products, and some of them become bestsellers or not, right? So all of that business information needs to be translated into an experience, an end-to-end experience across all these different channels. And that can't be done without that heavy operations bit in the middle, because it needs design, it needs your business, which is your data, and it needs someone technical to be able to update all of that on the go in your store, in your web store, in your app store, and back on marketing ops to back on all the different channels. So it's a very, very fragmented little layer in the middle. What Mason does, it pulls that entire layer together, connects your product and customer data with design. And so now you can power growth without having to, burn out across multiple different fragmented products and apps, without having to burn out collaborating remotely constantly. You can set up a lot of watches and autopilots to make, like, let's say price drops. You can make sure all your Facebook ads are updated with the right price instantly. You don't have to step in. So because Mason allows you to connect your product and customer data with your design, a whole new world of opportunities open up.
Right. So if we were to sort of try to contextualize this in something that maybe our audience would be familiar with in the local market, have you heard of the Shogun front end platform?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And have you heard about Shopify's new hydrogen and oxygen sort of infrastructure, plus their new front end layer that's going to be built out in Oxygen, which is effectively their new headless version or headless front end framework for Shopify? If we were to compare Mason with Oxygen or with Shogun front end, how would your technology or your platform or your middleware fit into that context and compare to that context of technology?
Absolutely. And you said it yourself. It's the middleware, right? So it sits right in the middle. And if you notice the little thing that's missing in both of these, on one side you have your store design, your store operations, and then on the other you have your technology, your store itself, your segments, your sections, all of that, right? And you also have your design and experience. As a brand, you have a certain experience that you want to give. There are certain, style guides. There are certain copy rules. There are certain ways that you want to amplify your voice as a business. And that part is still missing over here because that's still lying in your Figmas and sketches. So in this duo that you mentioned, I'm going to add a Figma as to complete the trinity. Right? So you have your Shogun front end, you have your Oxygen, Hydrogen, you also have your Figma and Sketch. So Mason fits right in the middle, makes all of these connected. And so, you can now pretty much run all your experiences on autopilot.
And so will your middleware effectively take a design that might be done in Sketch or Figma or Photoshop or wherever the digital designer, the creative designer, the graphic designer, the e-commerce designer, wherever they're doing their work, will your platform effectively plumb that design directly into a liquid template? Will it plummet directly into a Shogun front-end template by API? How does it, from a technical perspective, I'm really trying to grasp and understand exactly from the point of a design through to the impacts on the connectors that you connect to as endpoints. I'm trying to better understand, because I don't think I've ever come across a technology exactly like Mason in the market before. And as a result of that, I'm trying to, in the process of trying to understand it myself, I'm trying to help the audience understand the gap, I guess, in the market that Mason uniquely plugs.
Absolutely. And there are two parts to that answer. So the first is to directly answer your question. Yes. So what you can do is you can connect, let's say, your sketch design system. So you, as a brand design team, you have a certain way of showcasing your call to actions, a certain way of showcasing your price drops, a certain way of showcasing your discounts. So all these business functional blocks are actually translated by your design, by your brand, into some kind of visual, block. So that resides in your sketch system or your PSD, essentially your design system. And what you can do is keep it connected to Mason, so that the next time, you want to communicate, let's say, a bunch of products which are on a certain limited time offer, the system can directly access all that different components. On the other side, you can connect your Shopify backend, so your entire inventory or whatever other system that you're using for your pricing, etc. So let's say it's connected, you can connect directly your Shopify store. You are disconnected usually from every time you change your price or you're testing out your, discounts that you want to give to your users, etc. You do all of that, and then you need to access your design system separately to be able to communicate that back to your store or off your store. So now you can actually connect, let's say, that price drop call out to your price. And both of these are your inputs to Mason. And then when you set the automation, it constantly watches all the products. Whenever the price drop happens, it visually changes. Either it's a image, which is in the burn mode, or it could be a widget or a section, which is HTML5 or whatever other interactive output that you want it to have. So you can use either mode. So let's say you're saying that I want it in the interactive mode. So you select an interactive mode. So on one side, you connected, again, your design, which is your design section, which is your price call out. This is how it looks like, to your pricing engine. Then you said, these are your inputs. Then in Mason, you said, I want this as an interactive block. And then the system connects back to your storefront, which is your hydrogen system, and plugs in that component back as a section. Or if it is Instagram, by the way, you can also connect to Instagram or your Facebook. You can also directly connect it to Instagram and Facebook. And so a carousal ad or a carousel post can go out, or an Instagram story can go out as an image directly back to your Instagram.
Yeah, look, I'm still trying to fully comprehend exactly how this works, and maybe that's where a demo of the Mason platform would come in handy, of course. But if we think about how design happens today, when a promotion is run, apart from maybe a banner asset or something like that for a specific campaign or something like that the design team would be creating in something like Photoshop or Figma or wherever, apart from that, in terms of the call outs for discounts, that is all part of the CSS in the template or the theme engine already anyway. So whether, let's say that I'm in, because as we know, Shopify doesn't have a great promotional engine out of the box. So probably, 95% of the bigger merchants on Shopify will be using something like Bold Commerce or the, Bold Discounts. They'll be using some sort of an app to create the promotions and the timings of those promotions, which then connects to the Shopify API and sets the sale price for that product or its variants for a window of time, and then automatically resets them back to their original price at the end of the promotional period. Yep. Now, as part of the theme, the CSS is set to where, for example, when something's on special and it's got a special price set, it's got a strike through with a red price for the discounted price. So all of that stuff already exists in the underlying theme in CSS. So the only piece that would typically be custom designed at the point where a campaign starts and runs is specific banners or call outs or promotional messages that would typically sit in a promotional block, whether that be an editable section on the homepage, or now that there's sections everywhere in Shopify, that could be on a category page, a / collection page. It could be on a PDP. It could be almost anywhere. But really the only assets that get built out on a custom campaign basis are that promotion. So if you're promoting a category, if you're promoting a brand, something like that, a special campaign banner might be loaded onto the site. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, what you're saying is you're not going to override the CSS for pricing display or things like that. What you're going to do is you're going to take and you're going to plumb the designs of those promotional banners or the call outs for a specific section of Shopify. Mason is going to be connected to those sections directly from the design system, and it's going to push those assets or banners directly out of design at the point where the publisher pushes publish or the marketing team pushes publish. It's going to publish those directly to the sections that are predefined for those promotional banners to sit. And therefore, also at the same time, it's going to push them out to as a pre-configured, say, Instagram post or a Facebook post or whatever the case may be. And the timing is going to be orchestrated via the Mason middleware. Is that reasonably correct?
That's where the no-code part of everything comes in together, right? Like, of course, a lot of these can be orchestrated, as I alluded back to when I was talking about like this middle layer. It can definitely be orchestrated if you have one marketing ops person, you have someone in tech, or who's even a web engineer to help you out. You have your designer sitting with you. So as a brand manager, as an e-commerce manager, as someone who owns revenue, you need to pull in all these different units together to orchestrate any new updates that you want to do. And a step back from there is also that what else can I? What are these different playbooks that I can run? I mean, stock out and stock in and price drops are the obvious ones, right? But what else? What other thing can I do? Where am I finding all these? And you do that today. It's not impossible. You can go on online, amazing blogs which talk about, hey, the next time your products are trending, make sure they're automatically marked as trending, like top 3 best-selling products in your store in the last 30 days, each category, mark them out as trending or bestsellers, right? But if now that they're trending or bestsellers, a lot of people will buy that, right? So then you also want to make sure that they're marked as few left or running out low on stock when they do run out low on stock. And when they get out of stock, you want to make sure it's marked as stock out. All of this entire 3 different things are 3 different implementations in a way. For a brand maker and a revenue owner who wants to grow their business, this insight that I should do this end-to-end workflow. This is how this flow can happen. This is how my commerce brand will become high performance. That just doesn't happen because you have to pull in 3 different people. You have to now, it's a new sprint, right? How to discover all these different things. So that's where the no-code playbooks part of Mason comes in. It's almost like in GitHub, you have all these different projects. So in Mason, you have all these different growth projects. And you can take a look at all of that. Oh, these are cool stuff that people are doing. The example that I said, that every time products are best-selling in a certain category, I should mark them trending. When they get started, people start buying them a lot. I got to make sure that they are also, there's FOMO and it's marked as running out low and blah, 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 right? So they can discover these playbooks and implement them directly. A lot of times they don't have to pull in anyone because, again, it's no code. It's just like you're logging into a Shopify store and connecting it. You're logging into Sketch and connecting it. You're logging into Instagram and connecting it. So you don't need any specific implementation to happen. So it's like you're building, yes, but you're actually shipping and running stuff constantly.
And so could we think of Mason almost like Zapier on steroids, where it not only is a configurable connector to multiple endpoints to do certain things based on rules and triggers, but it also houses in its own database the assets that come from, say, the design system needed to support those automations?
I love that you said that because I've heard a few people mention that. So yeah, of course, definitely. I think I would say there's also a GitHub-ish thing to it, right? Because yes, on one side it is Zapier on steroids, but with a bit of eventually, hopefully, being a bit more of a GitHub for growth projects in a way. I think for me personally, as someone who's been doing startups for a while, and every time you're building, it's becoming so much easier to build stuff, right, Jason? Like, you can build a great podcast, you can build a great app, but then how do you get your podcast out there? How do you grow it? How do I grow my brand? How do I grow my company? How do I grow my business? That is still so, it's playbooks in blogs, in people's minds. And it would be so amazing to have that kind of like a GitHub for growth where I can browse projects and actually implement them, not just like, read a listicle or read a how-to, right? So I love what you said. It is kind of like a Zapier, e-commerce Zapier on steroids, but of course with also this whole, it's very important for me as someone who's a little lazy and doesn't really want all the time to like, hey, like get in 7 people into or 3 people into a war room, let's all implement this. A lot of times I just want to do it on my own and I don't want to code. So for me, that discovery of these different things that I can do to grow my business and not be dependent on anybody else to get it implemented, I think that's the power.
Right. And so if someone was to deploy Mason, and I'm guessing it's more often than not, it's going to be the marketing team that is pushing for Mason to be implemented within a business, particularly an e-commerce business, because it's typically the marketing team that is driving the promotional calendar. They're driving the campaign calendar. They're working with design to create the assets to support that calendar and that process. But really, it is driven by marketing. So whether that be a special promotion, a special bundle, a special drop, whether that be a new collection, whatever it might be, that is oftentimes very much driven out of the marketing department of a business. So is it more often than not the marketing team and the marketing side of the business that would engage with Mason in the first instance? They would, of course, probably require the technical team to a degree to get everything set up in the first place. Although you've got these kind of out-of-the-box connectors for specific design systems and platforms, and you've got certain connectors for specific e-commerce platforms like Shopify, in order to, I guess, map the elements that are coming out of specific systems into another system like a Shopify or like a Shogun front end, because you're not a front end platform yourself. So you're not I guess the expectation from your side is you're not going to replace a headless front end like Shogun front end. You're not there to replace Oxygen. You are there to ease the workflow of getting digital assets and creative assets to support specific campaigns and promotions into the right places in those front end systems in a no or low code way.
Yeah. I think you've summed it up really, really well. For sure, it's, the answer to solving a problem is not, create more products to solve the same problem, right? Because there are great front end systems out there. That's like, but the gap is right there, bang in the middle, where you gotta run every day. You're burning out because you wanna run a high performance e-commerce brand, and you don't just want text or a graphic. You actually want an experience to go out to your customer on the right channel. Yeah, that middleware is missing, and we are that middleware.
Right. So at the moment, the specifically the challenge that you solve for a marketing team, say for example, is instead of giving the designer a marketing calendar and saying, hey, we're going to need these 3 banners, we're going to need these 3 things, we're going to need an Instagram photo, we're going to need a Facebook short video clip, we're going to need these assets, these components of this campaign or this promotion, and then getting that back from them and sent to them either via email as an attachment to the marketing team or as a shared file drive in Google Drive or a network drive that the designer then would drop assets in there that the marketing team would grab and deploy manually to something like Instagram or to the website and load those assets into, say, for example, promotional apps that are already installed on something like Shopify, instead of the marketing team being that glue that connects design and creative with the sales channel itself or the marketing channel itself. Mason does that and provides the plumbing to do that instead of a human being the plumbing between the creative and design elements and the sales and marketing channel elements. Is that reasonably correct?
I think that's a good encapsulation, and it's the marketing, the in-store marketing or off-store marketing team is one example for sure. In smaller teams, we end up also seeing, the founder or the e-commerce head essentially also be that person, because a lot of times, if you notice, sales and revenue leads up to the CRO, which in the younger days is usually your marketing head or your e-commerce head, right? So these are also a couple of personas, very similar jobs to be done, but the designation or what they call themselves might differ a little.
Makes sense. Now, you've already got a number of key integrations. You've got a Zendesk integration, Unsplash, Figma, Pexel, Sketch, Contentful, Slack, MailChimp, Notion, Trello. As we said, Figma. Now, I'm guessing that the reason why you connect to platforms, say Zendesk or Slack, and internal, more operational, I would consider these more operational type systems. I'm guessing that the primary reason you connect to those type of systems is that as part of the workflow, the publishing workflow inside of businesses that happens between the creative and design team and, say, the marketing team or the brand team or the promotions team, the merchandising teams, a lot of those workflows, they might not live in something, as simple as a Jira or something like that to manage the interior, the internal pipeline of work related to promotions and campaigns. And so some of them will be using Trello, some of them will be using Notion, some of them will be using different technology, operational technology, to control what at the moment is a disjointed, in some cases, workflow of production. Both production, publication, and distribution happens across multiple different technologies, right? Happens in a design system, happens in a help desk sometimes, happens in a Slack, happens in a Notion, happens in a Trello. And I'm guessing one of the reasons why you have these connectors that are kind of non-e-commerce or non-front-end connectors is because you need to own or take over elements of the workflows that are happening in these other systems.
Yeah, I think more than owning, it's also like plugging it together, right? A lot of times, for example, someone's doing, and by the way, just like it's a multi-user workspace, right? So all your folks can be on the same place, you can collaborate together, etc. But you're not necessarily, on the app all the time. So in slightly, as you start growing a little bit, you might have vendor partners, right? You might have you'll be working with an agency who's dropping in the design file, and at that point in time, getting a notification might just want a glimpse of this new design in your Slack, and you just want to click from Slack. Okay, all right, good to go. So stuff like that it's more than replacing. People will discuss and collaborate on platforms that are also beyond your product experience and your brand experience. So keeping them out of the ecosystem makes it difficult. It just adds, it continues to also, basically it will continue to be that, fragmented silos, right? So our, at least that's how both me and my co-founder are thinking. It's our vision that, hey, can we plug all of them together eventually, so that if you are on Slack, you're not left out. You can still get a quick glimpse of that new design that your agency partner dropped in. You can say, I love it. And then that comment shows back on the same project.
And I guess it pushes that comment back to Slack, the Slack channel as well. So it's a bi-directional integration with the likes of Slack or Zendesk or Trello. And then I'm guessing that in your UI layer, is your UI layer, if I had to use a comparison of some variety, it's almost like a Canva on steroids, in the sense that you can bring in assets from these external design systems. You can bring in assets from the e-commerce database. You can bring in different elements into your UI, your user interface, for someone who's not necessarily a graphic designer, but can take those predefined elements to create a consistent brand experience across those promotions and campaigns. And they can bring all those things together in your UI in a drag and drop, almost a widgetized way, before publishing it to those channels.
Yeah, you just nailed it. Yep, absolutely. And it's, the comments appear as, as how it appears on a Figma or a sketch file. It's just your list of all your conversations that you were having around that project, around that specific communication. And it's all in one place, but it's also on exactly where you are.
Right. And so for the brands that are using you today, and obviously you've got a fair bit of, you say that you've got 3,000 e-commerce brands and teams using Mason today, which is obviously huge success. Congratulations. That's a massive number. So awesome. Well done. And so you've got some pretty big names listed on the website. You've got Flipkart and Nikon and Hub and a few other, pretty big brands that you reference as being sort of those showcase or halo brands that you guys are already working with. When they first adopt you guys into the business, what is the workflows that are typically what do they typically launch with? Now, they obviously don't launch with everything that you offer out of the box, because I'm guessing it's very much an iterative an iterative way of adopting Mason into the business. Yeah. So they'll adopt it for maybe one small component or one small piece of a workflow to start off with, just to get their feet wet. And then they'll slowly start to work out, hey, this is awesome. We love it for this, but we'd also like it to do these other three things, and we'll slowly roll it out across our enterprise and across our existing sort of more manual workflows. What is the kind of common, design patterns, if we want to use a development term? What are the common, or architectural term? What are some of the common design patterns that you're seeing Mason deployed into for the businesses that adopt the platform?
I would say there are more business triggers for which it starts off, because as we were speaking about, it's a business tool, and it gets deployed for business jobs to be done. So it gets started with projects that are aligned towards a certain business goal. So a lot of times what we've noticed is that a good entry point is usually these in-store, off-store playbooks that I mentioned around, which are around your pricing, inventory, your customer interactions with your products. Because as we were discussing, it's not a siloed update. It's actually a string of updates that have to stitch together to make sure that experience continues to. So that seems to be a very interesting entry point for most teams. And then expanding into, hey, we want to also put this communication off the web, off the store. And then we want to expand into adjacent business triggers also, which could be around new arrivals. Can I launch products easily across all different platforms? The launch is always so stressful. Can I run a sale, which is discounting and couponing and all of that, right? Can I run a sale and sale communication in-store and off-store? So it starts off with just your day-to-day business as usual. How do I not give a fragmented experience, but actually connect the workflows, all the different things that have to happen to give my customer and my shopper a sustained, simple, same experience across whether the product's trending, running out, back in stock, or running out of stock, or whatever else that's happening to it. And then stretch it out, not just in store to off the store, and then stretch it out to discounts and sales, and then stretching it out to new arrivals and launches and all of that.
Great. And so when you say sort of that harmonizing of the in-store experience and the online experience. So let's say Mason is connected to a Shopify store. Let's say you're running Bold, the Bold Promotions app, and you're running a promotion that's time limited across a set of 10 SKUs, and now it's 10% off. Then because it's connected to Shopify, and when that promotion is triggered and those prices are actually changed by the Bold app itself, then you could trigger off a matching workflow inside Mason that says, okay, we now need to create some in-store print banners or print leaflets that the store staff are going to print off in store, and they're going to put up as shelf end caps, or they're going to hang them from the ceiling, or they're going to, put up some red pricing labels to match these promotions for these SKUs in store. Mason could trigger off the creation of those assets with the design elements and the specific SKU and informational elements that come from Shopify It can fuse those together, create an output, say, for example, a PDF file that gets sent to automatically and dynamically to each store that's set up to receive that finalized PDF promotional file. They can print it off in store, and then they can place those up around the store. And that matches at the time when that's then set to run on the website so that they stay in sync for the in-store experience and the online experience. And then same again, when the app automatically removes those products from being on special because the promotion has expired, then a commensurate workflow can be there to create the standard messaging, the standard shelf labels, et cetera, via Mason that then gets sent to the store so that they can re-update the store back to its original non-promotional configuration. Is that the type of thing that you would refer to as in terms of syncing online, offline experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And the second part of it, which is making sure that when the promotion's done, coupon runs out, you have that communicated back to your offline channels or rather off-store channels are so important, Jason. Like, it's happened to me so many times that I'm on Instagram and I'm, watching this story, and all of a sudden I run into a story ad and it's a good looking t-shirt, and I'm all in for a good quality, graphic tee in India. Right? That's what I wear at home all the time, and we are all working from home now. So I'm just, I love it. I tap on it. I'm in the store funnel now. I'm even more excited. My credit card's almost like out of my pocket, right? And then the size is not there, or that offer is actually expired offer. Like, you get that terrible, warning message. Offer is expired. And it's such a loss of trust in that brand, and it happens the second time and you just give up. It's happened to me. I've just given up on a couple of brands because I'm like, they never sync their ads. They never sync their off-store communication to what's really happening in their business. And I just don't want to shop from them. If I want to shop from them, I'll go on, some marketplace, or I might end up going directly to the store maybe, but definitely not believing them on any social channel ever again. So that is so important. That sync is so important. You're losing so many users. I think there was a research that said, like, you're losing, I think, about 50% of orders that you can get simply because of this tiny little miss. It looks so small and harmless, but as a shopper, I can tell you it's very, very disappointing, and just I lose trust in the brand.
But I guess that's also holds true for even pure play e-commerce brands that, for example, again, going back to that bold commerce app example, and that's just one example. There's over 8,000 apps in the Shopify app store. So apps do all sorts of things in an automated way, but I just want to stick with that one use case just because I think it's useful.
Yeah.
Because, when it comes to promotions on Shopify, lots of brands will use a promotional app because of the gaps in the native automatic promotions in Shopify, the limitations there being able to only run one automatic promotion at a time. So again, going back to that same example where a bold, promotions app stops a promotion because either it's reached the end of its life in terms of units sold, or it's reached the end date of the promotional or campaign period. And then the marketing team, say, for example, or the merchandising team forgets to log into the website and take down a promotional banner out of a Shopify section, for example, that was advertising that particular promotion. And so the customer expects, hey, I click on this banner, I go to this collection, I expect to get the deal. Hey, what gives here? We're all on our normal prices, right? We don't see the strike-throughs. We don't see the discounts. Whatever they were expecting to see, they're not seeing. And so what you're saying is, even in a case of a pure play e-commerce brand, your automations are going to create the workflows associated with campaign management and messaging management to preserve the customer experience and ensure it always stays in sync. Or it could take it one step further and say, hey, we're going to, when a stock gets to zero of a specific product, or a specific product that's associated with a promotion, we're now going to dynamically remove the promotional banner because the inventory has reached zero, not necessarily because the campaign date has reached an end. So you can set these, I guess, cascading rules around how you want to manage the customer experience based on what's actually happening in real time in the store. Is that pretty accurate?
Absolutely. And what we are coming up with is the Dev Hub. So these are rules which are, kind of out of the box, no code rules for now, but low code. Right? So, your Dev Hub, you can extend these custom rules to. So that's going to come up. So we are very excited by a bunch of create developer teams reaching out to us and asking us, hey, can we extend it to this? And can we also do this? And we're like, hey, like, yeah, you should be able to. So that's going to come up to Jason, where, teams and, agency partners and development partners can actually extend these hooks to create custom workflows or custom rules and workflows and cascading workflows and rules that can enable you to even customize and augment a lot of the out-of-the-box playbooks that are already available, right? So you can add a little bit of nuance over there and say something like, hey, like, but I also want to make sure that, there's a dollar sign and, the price is always rounded off. Something as unique as that, right? Or I always want to make sure that the zero shows more like this. So you can create like business rules or design rules or styling rules essentially, and they will be all open APIs that you can use.
Wow, exciting stuff. Look, it took me a while to sort of, I guess, get to a place where I somewhat understood. I feel like I maybe only am scratching the surface of what Mason is capable of, to be honest. But I feel like, it was a good exercise to go down the path of a very limited use case to try to help me and the audience to better understand how Mason could plug into a pretty standard workflow that a business might have today using a Shopify store and a promotions engine to achieve a good customer experience. And I'm sure that there's 1,000 other use cases like that and playbooks like that that will not only be out of the box in Mason, but as you say, if you've kind of got almost like a GitHub type of scenario, then you've got people sharing their playbooks. And sure, you might have to tweak it a little bit, but instead of starting from scratch, you're starting with a default playbook with a default rule set, and then you tweak it for your specific use case or adapt it to your specific use case instead of building from scratch. And so I think that idea of having, it's almost like, Zapier zaps, right? There's certain zaps that you can download that are sort of pre-configured. It's like your equivalent of a zap, right? That's what it feels like to me. So it feels like, again, it feels almost like a combination of a Zapier on steroids, a Canva on steroids, plus a whole bunch of out-of-the-box integrations that make the endpoints easier to work with without having to custom integrate them using either your API endpoints or other middleware. So look, it sounds like a very, very exciting platform. What is next? I mean, you've kind of already talked about what might be next for Mason, which is, hey, we're trying to bring in the developer community onto the platform so that they can enhance and extend the platform beyond what we can even imagine. But internally, because you're such a hardcore product person, if we were to look at Mason in 6 months' time from now, what would you like Mason to be able to do in 6 months that it can't do today?
Yeah, I think the GitHub part that I mentioned to you, right? That's where we want to be at. A lot of these projects being easily usable and shareable, right? We're not there today because the teams are creating stuff for themselves and also because the DevHub's not open yet. So a lot of these playbooks are still out of the box from us and from our learnings from different teams and different experts like you. But that's where we want to be. Like, we want to be in a place in the next 6 to 8 months where others can help create these projects and playbooks. And it actually truly is more a GitHub rather than a GitHub which is run by us.
Makes total sense. Now, if someone wants to get a hold of you or check out Mason, is it best that they just go to getmason.io, or should they reach out to you directly? Or how would you like anybody who's interested in looking at Mason, how would you like them to get a hold of you?
That's a great question. So we are actually launching out. We were in closed beta for a while. We're gonna get out in October, full, open. Anybody can use it. For now, even if you register or sign up on getmason.io, I'll reach back to you, or you can just DM me on Twitter. My DM's open. It's at kmanjita, at KMANJITA, and always up for a great conversation, a great feedback session. I'm such a feedback hog. I love talking to people who will use, might think someone else will use Mason. and, gives it a spin, chats with me, brainstorms with me, gives me a different perspective, to even speak about how what this is all about. Today, you gave me a very interesting, perspective. Hey, Zapier Zap, yeah, and I didn't think of it that way. I did, but I never thought that could be a good explanation of it, right? So just DM me. You can sign up at getmason.io or just DM me on Twitter at Manjita, and I'll, either walk you through a demo, hand it off to you for a spin, or take your feedback.
Sounds fantastic. Now, Twitter's just not that popular down in ANZ. I don't know if you know, it's mainly a North American thing. How about a DM on LinkedIn? Would you take that?
Absolutely. I'll take a DM on LinkedIn. I'll take a tag on LinkedIn too. No worries.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, Kauss, I really appreciate your time. It has been super enjoyable. It's challenged my thinking on a few things. It really made me dig deep to try to find how I can sort of try to break this down in my own mind of where Mason fits into that kind of commerce ecosystem. But it makes a lot more sense to me now, thanks to the conversation that we've had. And I really, really hope that it has the same impact on our audience. And I hope they go and they check out getmason.io. I think you're doing some exciting things in the space. It's really groundbreaking conceptually, which is probably why I had such a hard time wrapping my head around it initially. And I love the fact that you're a serial entrepreneur. I love the fact that you were willing to pivot your business away from something that wasn't working as well as maybe you had hoped, and that you were willing to make this jump into something new that you felt, hey, there's a gap in the market. We've identified it. We're going to go and attack this in a no-code, low-code way, make it super easy for brands to adopt and integrate into their existing workflows and systems and stacks. I love what you're doing, and I wish you every single success. And I'm hoping we can do this again in maybe 12 months, and we'll see where Mason is at that point.
I'm so glad that I had this conversation with you, and I'll see you again in 12 months.
Thanks for listening to the At the Coalface podcast. If you want more At the Coalface, you can subscribe to our premium e-commerce and digital newsletter, At the Coalface Digest.